Mr. President, no man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism as well as the abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subjects in different lights. And therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful to those gentlemen if, entertaining as I do opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment in this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject, ought to be the freedom of the debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at truth and fulfill the great responsibility which we hold to God and our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason toward my country, and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We're apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men, engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not, the things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that's the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging of the future but by the past. And judging by the past, I wish to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which these gentlemen have been pleased to solace themselves in the House. Is it that insidious smile with which our petition has been lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare to your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petition comports with these warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our land. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motives for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of navies and armies? No, sir, she has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry has been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try harder? Sir, we've been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer on the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, but it has all been in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplication? What terms shall we find which have not been already exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves any longer. Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves. before the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament.
History.
Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after these things, may we indulge the fond hope of peace and reconciliation. There's no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we mean to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges for which we have been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, and which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our contest shall be obtained, we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left of us. Tell us, sir, we, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary, but when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and when a British guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength by irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies shall have bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak. If we make a proper use of the means which the God of nature hath placed in our power, 3 millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, and who will raise friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sir, we have an election. If we were basically silent, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard in the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come! I repeat, sir, let it come!
Make you a little money.
It is in vain, sir, to extenuate them. Gentlemen may cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here to idle? What is it that the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death.
Fellow citizens of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, among the vicissitudes incident to life, no event could have filled me with greater anxiety than that of which notification was transmitted by your order and received on the 14th day of the present month. On the one hand, I was summoned by my country, whose voice I can never hear but with veneration and love, from the retreat which I had chosen in my flattering hopes, with an immutable decision as the asylum of my declining years. A retreat which was rendered every day more necessary, as well as more dear to me, by the addition of habit, inclination, and of frequent interruptions in my health to the gradual waste committed on it by time. On the other hand, the magnitude and difficulty of the trust to which the voice of my country called me, being sufficient to waken in the wisest and most experienced of her citizens a distrustful scrutiny into his own qualifications, could not but overwhelm with despondence one who, inheriting inferior endowments from nature and unpracticed in the duties of civil administration, ought to be peculiarly conscious of his own deficiency. In this conflict of emotions, all I dare hope is that if, in executing this task, I have been too much swayed by a grateful remembrance of former instances, or by an affectionate sensibility to this transcendent proof of the confidence of my fellow citizens, and have thence too little consulted my incapacity, as well as disinclination for the weighty and untried cares before me, my error will be palliated by the motives which misled me, and its consequences be judged by my country with some share of the partiality in which they originated. By the article establishing the executive department, it is made the duty of the President to recommend to your consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. The circumstances under which I now meet you will acquit me from entering into that subject, further than to refer to the great constitutional charter on which you are assembled, and which, in defining your powers, designates the objects to which your attention is to be given. It will be more consistent with those circumstances, and far more congenial with the feelings which actuate me, to substitute in place of a recommendation of particular measures the tribute that is due to the talents, the rectitude, and the patriotism which adorn the characters selected to devise and adopt them. In these honorable qualifications, I behold the surest pledges that as on one side no local prejudices or attachments, no separate views, nor party animosities will misdirect the comprehensive and equal eye which ought to watch over this great assemblage of communities and interests. So on another, that the foundations of our national policy will be laid in the pure and immutable principles of private morality, and the preeminence of free government be exemplified by all the attributes which can win the affections of its citizens and command the respect of the world. I dwell on this prospect with every satisfaction which an ardent love for my country can inspire, since there is no truth more thoroughly established than that there is of nature an indissoluble union between virtue and happiness, between duty and advantage, between the genuine maxims of an honest and magnanimous policy and the solid rewards of public prosperity and felicity. Since we ought to be no less persuaded that the propitious smiles of heaven can never be expected on a nation that disregards the eternal rules of order and right which heaven itself has ordained, and since the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. To the preceding observations, I have one to add, which will be most properly addressed to the House of Representatives. It concerns myself, and will therefore be as brief as possible. When I was first honored with a call into the service of my country, then on the eve of an arduous struggle for its liberties, the light in which I contemplated my duty required that I should renounce every pecuniary compensation. From this resolution, I have in no instance departed. And being still under the impressions which produced it, I must decline, as inapplicable to myself, any share in the personal emoluments which may be indispensably included in a permanent provision for the executive department, and must accordingly pray that the pecuniary estimates for the station in which I am placed may, during my continuance in it, be limited to such actual expenditures as the public good may be thought to require. Having thus imparted to you my sentiments, as they have been awakened by the occasion which brings us together, I shall take my present leave, but not without resorting once more to the benign parent of the human race in humble supplication, that since he has been pleased to favor the American people with opportunities for deliberating in perfect tranquility and dispositions for deciding with unparalleled unanimity on a form of government for the security of their union and the advancement of their happiness, so his divine blessings may be equally conspicuous in the enlarged views, the temperate consultations, and the wise measures on which the success of this government must depend.
Friends and fellow
I'm gonna
citizens,
slap him in the face with the unexpected.
called upon to undertake the duties of the first executive office of our country, I avail myself of the presence of that portion of my fellow citizens which is here assembled to express my grateful thanks for the favor with which they have been pleased to look toward me, to declare a sincere consciousness that the task is above my talents, and that I approach it with those anxious and awful presentiments which the greatness of the charge and the weakness of my powers so justly inspire. A rising nation spread over a wide and fruitful land, traversing all the seas with the rich productions of their industry, engaged in commerce with nations who feel power and forget right,
advancing rapidly to destinies beyond the reach of mortal eye. When I contemplate these transcendent objects and see the honor, the happiness, and the hopes of this beloved country committed to the issue and the auspices of this day, I shrink from the contemplation and humble myself before the magnitude of the undertaking. Utterly indeed should I despair, did not the presence of many whom I see here remind me that in the other high authorities provided by our Constitution, I shall find resources of wisdom, of virtue, and of zeal on which to rely under all difficulties. To you then, gentlemen, who are charged with the sovereign functions of legislation, and to those associated with you, I look with encouragement for that guidance and support which may enable us to steer with safety the vessel in which we are all embarked amidst the conflicting elements of a troubled world. During the contest of opinion through which we have passed, the animation of discussions and of exertions
has sometimes worn an aspect which might impose on strangers unused to think freely and speak and write what they think. But this being now decided by the voice of the nation, announced according to the rules of the Constitution, all will of course arrange themselves under the will of the law and unite in common efforts for the common good. All too will bear in mind this sacred principle, that though the will of the majority is in all cases to prevail, that will to be rightful must be reasonable, that the minority possess their equal rights, which equal laws must protect, and to violate which oppression. Let us then, fellow citizens, unite with one heart and one mind. Let us restore to social intercourse that harmony and affection without which liberty and even life itself are but dreary things. And let us reflect that having banished from our land that religious intolerance under which mankind so long bled and suffered, we have yet gained little if we countenance a political intolerance as despotic, as wicked, and as capable of as bitter and bloody persecution. During the throes and convulsions of the ancient world, during the agonizing spasms of infuriated man seeking through blood and slaughter his long-lost liberty, it was not wonderful that the agitation of the billows should reach even this distant and peaceful shore, that this should be more felt and feared by some and less by others, and should divide opinions as to measures of safety. But every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have called by different names brethren of the same principle. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. If there be any among us who wish to dissolve this union or to change its Republican form, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated, where reason is left free to combat it. I know indeed some honest men fear that a Republican government cannot be strong, that this government is not strong enough. But would the honest patriot in the full tide of successful experiment abandon a government which has so far kept us free and firm on the theoretic and visionary fear that this government, the world's best hope, may by possibility want energy to preserve itself? I trust not.
I believe this, on the contrary, the strongest government on earth. I believe it the only one where every man at the call of the law would fly to the standard of the law and would meet invasions of the public order as his own personal concern. Sometimes it is said that man cannot be trusted with the government of himself. Can he then be trusted with the government of others? Or have we found angels in the form of kings to govern him? Let history answer this question. Let us then, with courage and confidence, pursue our own federal and republican principles, our attachment to union and representative government, kindly separated by nature and a wide ocean from the exterminating havoc of 1/4 of the globe, too high-minded to endure the degradation of the others, possessing a chosen country with room enough for our descendants to 1,000th and 1,000th generation, entertaining a due sense of our equal right to the use of our own faculties, to the acquisition of our own industry, to honor and confidence from our fellow citizens, resulting not from birth, but from our actions, and their senses, enlightened by a benign religion, professed indeed and practiced in various forms, yet all of them inculcating honesty, truth, temperance, gratitude, and the love of man, acknowledging and adoring and overruling providence, which by all its dispensations proves that it delights in the happiness of man here, and his greater happiness hereafter. With all these blessings, what more is necessary to make us a happy, prosperous people? Still one thing more, fellow citizens, a wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, shall leave them otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. This is the sum of good government, and this is necessary to close the circle of our felicities. About to enter, fellow citizens, upon the exercise of duties which comprehend everything dear and valuable to you, it is proper you should understand what I deem the essential principles of our government, and consequently, those which ought to shape its administration. I will compress them within the narrowest compass they will bear, stating the general principle but not all its limitations. Equal and exact justice to all men, of whatever state or persuasion, religious or political. Peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. The support of the state governments in all their rights as the most competent administrations for our domestic concerns, and the surest bulwarks against anti-republican tendencies. The preservation of the general government in its whole constitutional vigor as the sheet anchor of our peace at home and safety abroad. A jealous care of the right of election by the people.
A mild and safe correction of abuses which are locked by the sword of revolution,
where peaceable remedies are unprovided.
Absolute acquiescence in the decisions of the majority, the vital principle of republics, from which there is no appeal but to force, the vital principle and immediate parent of despotism. A well-disciplined militia, our best reliance in peace, from the first moments of war till regulars may relieve them. The supremacy of the civil over the military authority. Economy in the public expense, that labor may be lightly burdened. The honest payment of our debts, and sacred preservation of the public faith. Encouragement of agriculture and of commerce as its handmaid. The diffusion of information and arraignment of all abuses at the bar of the public reason. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of person under the protection of the habeas corpus and trial by juries impartially selected. These principles form the bright constellation which has gone before us and guided our steps through an age of revolution and reformation. The wisdom of our sages and blood of our heroes have been devoted to their attainment. They should be the creed of our political faith, the text of civic instruction, the touchstone by which to try the services of those we trust. And should we wander from them in moments of error or of alarm, let us hasten to retrace our steps and to regain the road which alone leads to peace, liberty, and safety. I repair then, fellow citizens, to the post you have assigned. With experience enough in subordinate offices to have seen the difficulties of this, the greatest of all, I have learned to expect that it will rarely fall to the lot of imperfect men to retire from this station with the reputation and the favor which bring him into it. Without pretensions to that high confidence you reposed in our first and greatest revolutionary character, whose preeminent services had entitled him to the first place in his country's love and destined him for the fairest page in the volume of faithful history. I ask so much confidence only as may give firmness and effect to the legal administration of your affairs. I shall often go wrong through defect of judgment. When right, I shall often be thought wrong by those whose positions will not command a view of the whole ground. I ask your indulgence for my own errors, which will never be intentional, and your support against the errors of others, who may condemn what they would not if seen in all its parts. The approbation implied by your suffrage is a great consolation to me for the past, and my future solicitude will be to retain the good opinion of those who have bestowed it in advance, to conciliate that of others by doing them all the good in my power, and to be instrumental to the happiness and freedom of all. Relying on the patronage of your goodwill, I advance with obedience to the work, ready to retire from it whenever you become sensible how much better choices it is in your power to make. And may May that infinite power which rules the destinies of the universe lead our councils to what is best and give them a favorable issue for your peace and prosperity.
Mr. Speaker, I address you, sir, with anxiety and distress of mind with me wholly unprecedented. The friends of this bill seem to consider it as the exercise of a common power, as an ordinary affair, a mere municipal regulation which they expect to see pass without other questions than those concerning details. But, sir, the principle of this bill materially affects the liberties and rights of the whole people of the United States. To me, it appears that it would justify a revolution in this country, and that in no great length of time it may produce it. When I see the zeal and perseverance with which this bill has been urged along its parliamentary path, when I know the local interests and associated projects which combine to promote its success, all opposition to it seems manifestly unavailing. I am almost tempted to leave without a struggle my country to its fate. But, sir, while there is life, there is hope. So long as the fatal shaft has not yet sped, if heaven so will, the bow may be broken and the vigor of the mischief-meditating arm wither. If there be a man in this house or nation who cherishes the Constitution under which we are assembled, as the chief stay of his hope, as the light which is destined to gladden his own day and to soften even the gloom of the grave by the prospects it sheds over his children, I fall not behind him in such sentiments. I will yield to no man in attachment to this Constitution, in veneration for the sages who laid its foundations, in devotion to those principles which form its cement and constitute its proportions. What then must be my feelings? What ought to be the feelings of a man cherishing such sentiments when he sees an act contemplated which lays ruin at the foot of all these hopes? When he sees a principle of action about to be usurped, before the operation of which the bands of this Constitution are no more than flax before the fire or stubble before the whirlwind. When this bill passes, such an act is done, and such a principle is usurped. Mr. Speaker, there is a great rule of human conduct, which he who honestly observes cannot err widely from the path of his sought duty. It is to be very scrupulous concerning the principles you select as the test of your rights and obligations, to be very faithful in noticing the result of their application, and to be very fearless in tracing and exposing their immediate effects and distant consequences. Under the sanction of this rule of conduct, I am compelled to declare it as my deliberate opinion that if this bill passes, the bonds of this union are virtually dissolved, that the states which compose it are free from their moral obligations, and that as it will be the right of all, so it will be the duty of some to prepare definitely for a separation, amicably if they can, violently if they must. When I spoke of the separation of the states as resulting from the violation of the Constitution contemplated in this bill, I spoke of it as a necessity, deeply to be deprecated, but as resulting from causes so certain and obvious as to be absolutely inevitable when the effect of the principle is practically experienced. It is to preserve, to guard the Constitution of my country, that I denounce this attempt. I would rouse the attentions of gentlemen from the apathy with which they seem beset. These observations are not made in a corner. There is no low intrigue, no secret machination. I am on the people's own ground. To them I appeal concerning their own rights, their own liberties, their own intent in adopting this Constitution. The voice I have uttered, at which gentlemen startle with such agitation, is no unfriendly voice. I intended it as a voice of warning. By this people and by the event, if this bill passes, I am willing to be judged whether it be not a voice of wisdom. The bill which is now proposed to be passed has this assumed principle for its basis, that the three branches of this national government, without recurrence to conventions of the people in the states or to the legislatures of the states, are authorized to admit new partners to a share of the political power in countries out of the original limits of the United States. Now, this assumed principle I maintain to be altogether without any sanction in the Constitution. I declare it to be a manifest and atrocious usurpation of power, of a nature dissolving, according to undeniable principles of moral law, the obligations of our national compact, and leading to all the awful consequences which flow from such a state of things. Concerning this assumed principle, which is the basis of this bill, this is the general position on which I rest my argument, that if the authority now proposed to be exercised be delegated to the three branches of the government by virtue of the Constitution, it results either from its general nature or from its particular provision. I shall consider distinctly both these sources in relation to this pretended power. Touching the general nature of the instrument called the Constitution of the United States, there is no obscurity. It has no fabled descent like the palladium of ancient Troy from the heavens. Its origin is not confused by the mists of time or hidden by the darkness of past unexplored ages. It is the fabric of our day. Some now living had a share in its construction. All of us stood by and saw the rising of the edifice. There can be no doubt about its nature. It is a political compact. By whom and about what? A preamble to the instrument will answer these questions. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It is we, the people of the United States, for ourselves and our posterity, not for the people of Louisiana, nor for the people of New Orleans or of Canada. None of these enter into the scope of the instrument. It embraces only the United States of America. Who these are, it may seem strange in this place to inquire. But truly, sir, our imaginations have of late been so accustomed to wander after new settlements to the very ends of the earth, that it will not be time ill spent to inquire what this phrase means and what it includes. These are not terms adopted haphazardly. They have reference to a state of things existing anterior to the Constitution. When the people of the present United States began to contemplate a severance from their parent state, it was a long time before they fixed definitely the name by which they would be designated. In 1774, they called themselves the Colonies and Provinces of North America. In 1775, the representatives of the United Colonies of North America. In the Declaration of Independence, the representatives of the United States of America. And finally, in the Articles of Confederation, the style of the Confederacy is declared to be the United States of America. It is with reference to the old Articles of Confederation and to preserve the identity and established individuality of their character, that the preamble to this Constitution, not content simply with declaring that it is we, the people of the United States, who enter into this compact, adds that it is for the United States of America. Concerning the territory contemplated by the people of the United States, these general terms, there can be no dispute. It is settled by the Treaty of Peace and included within the Atlantic Ocean the sand draw, the lakes, and more precisely, so far as relates to the frontier, having relation to the present argument, within a line to be drawn through the middle of the river Mississippi until it intersect the northernmost part of the 31st degree of north latitude. Thence, within a line drawn due east on this degree of latitude to the river Apalachicola. Thence, along the middle of this river to its junction with the Flint River. Thence, straight to the head of the St. Mary's River, and thence down the St. Mary's to the Atlantic Ocean. I have been thus particular to draw the minds of gentlemen distinctly to the meaning of the terms used in the preamble, to the extent which the United States then included, and to the fact that neither New Orleans nor Louisiana was within the comprehension of the terms of this instrument. The part of the third section of the fourth article on which the advocates of this bill rely is the following. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state. I know, Mr. Speaker, that the first clause of this paragraph has been read with all the superciliousness of a grammarian's triumph. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, accompanied with this most consequential inquiry. Is not this a new state to be admitted? And is there not here an express authority? I have no doubt this is a full and satisfactory argument to everyone who is content with the mere colors and superficies of things. And if we were now at the bar of some stall-fed justice, the inquiry would ensure the victory to the maker of it, to the manifest delight of the constables and suitors of his court. But, sir, we are now before the tribunal of the whole American people, reasoning concerning their liberties, their rights, their constitution. These are not to be made the victims of the inevitable obscurity of
General terms, nor the
sport of verbal criticism. The question is
concerning the intent of the American people,
the proprietors of the old United States, when they agreed to this article. Dictionaries and spelling books are here of no authority. Neither Johnson, nor Walker, nor Webster, nor Dilworth has any voice in this matter. Sir, the question concerns the proportion of power reserved by this Constitution to every state in this Union. Have the three branches of this government a right, at will, to weaken and outweigh the influence, respectively, secured to each state in this compact by introducing at pleasure new partners situate beyond the old limits of the United States? The question has not relation merely to New Orleans. The great objection is to the principle of the bill. If this principle be admitted, the whole space of Louisiana, greater, it is said, than the entire extent of the old United States, will be a mighty theater in which this government assumes the right of exercising this unparalleled power. And it will be. There is no concealment. It is intended to be exercised. Nor will it stop until the very name and nature of the old partners be overwhelmed by newcomers into the Confederacy. Sir, the question goes to the very root of the power and influence of the present members of this Union. The real intent of this article is therefore an injury of most serious import, and is to be settled only by a recurrence to the known history and known relations of this people and their Constitution. These, I maintain, support this position that the terms new state in this article do not intend new political sovereignties with territorial annexations
to be created without the original limits of the United States. But, says the gentleman from Tennessee, these people have been 7 years citizens of the United States. Not yet, sir. As citizens of New Orleans or of Louisiana, they never have been. And by the mode proposed, they never will be citizens of the United States. For a moment, but no real cement can grow from such an association. But the gentleman asks, what shall we do if we do not admit the people of Louisiana into our union? Our children are settling that country. Sir, it is no concern of mine what he does. Because his children have run wild and uncovered into the woods, is that a reason for him to break into my house or the houses of my friends to filch our children's clothes in order to cover his children's nakedness? This Constitution never was and never can be strained to lap over all the wilderness of the West without essentially affecting both the rights and convenience of its real proprietor. It was never constructed to form a covering for the inhabitants of the Missouri and Red River country. And whenever it is attempted to be stretched over them, it will rent asunder. It was not for these men that our fathers fought. It was not for them this Constitution was adopted. You have no authority to throw the rights and liberties and property of this people into hodgepodge with the wild men on the Missouri, nor with the mixed, though more respectable race of Anglo, Hispano, Gallo Americans who bask on the sands in the mouth of the Mississippi. I make no objection to these from their want of moral qualities or political life. The inhabitants of New Orleans are, I suppose, like those of all other countries, some good, some bad, some I will add only a few words in relation to the moral and political consequences of usurping this power. I have said that it would be a virtual dissolution of the Union, and gentlemen expressed great sensibility at the expression. But the true source of terror is not the declaration I have made, but the deed you propose. Is there a moral principle of public law better settled or more conformable to the plainest suggestions of reason than that the violation of a contract by one of the parties may be considered as exempting the other from its obligations? 13 form a partnership, and 10 of them undertake to admit a new partner without the concurrence of the other 3. Would it not be at their option to abandon the partnership after so palpable an infringement of their rights? How much more in the political partnership, where the admission of new associates without previous authority is so pregnant with obvious dangers and evils. If gentlemen are so alarmed at the bare mention of the consequences, let them abandon a measure which sooner or later will produce them. How long before the seeds of discontent will ripen, no man can foretell. But it is the part of wisdom not to multiply or scatter them. By the course of nature and conformable to the acknowledged principles of the Constitution, the scepter of power in this country is passing toward the Northwest. Sir, there is to this no objection. The right belongs to that quarter of the country. Enjoy it. It is yours. Use the powers granted as you please, but take care in your haste after effectual domination not to overload the scale by heaping it with these new acquisitions. Grasp not too eagerly at your purpose. In your speed after uncontrolled sway, trample not down this Constitution. Respect to this love of our union, concerning which so much sensibility is expressed, I have no fears about analyzing its nature. There is has in it nothing of mystery. It depends upon the qualities of that union, and it results from its effects upon our and our country's happiness. It is valued for that sober certainty of waking bliss which it enables us to realize. It grows out of the affection, and has not and cannot be made to have anything universal in its nature. Sir, I confess it. The first public love of my heart is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There is my fireside. There are the tombs of my ancestors. The love of this union grows out of this attachment to my native soil and is rooted in it. I cherish it because it affords the best external hope of her peace, her prosperity, her independence. I oppose this bill from no animosity to the people of New Orleans, but from the deep conviction that it contains a principle incompatible with the liberties and safety of my country. I have no concealment of my opinion. The bill, if it passes, is a death blow to the Constitution. It may afterward linger, but lingering its fate will at no very distant period be consummated.
Sir, gentlemen appear to me to forget that they stand on American soil. That they are not in the British House of Commons, but in the chamber of the House of Representatives of the United States. That we have nothing to do with the affairs of Europe, the partition of territory and sovereignty there, except so far as these things affect the interests of our own country. Gentlemen transform themselves into the Burkes, Chathams, and Pitts of another country, and forgetting from honest zeal the interests of America, engage with European sensibility in the discussion of European interests. I look at the political transactions of Europe, with the single exception of their possible bearing upon us, as I do at the history of other countries and other times. I do not survey them with half the interest that I do the movements in South America. Our political relation with them is much less important than it is supposed to be. I have no fears of French or English subjugation. If we are united, we are too powerful for the mightiest nation in Europe or all Europe combined. If we are separated and torn asunder, we shall become an easy prey to the weakest of them. In the latter dreadful contingency, our country will not be worth preserving. The war was declared because Great Britain arrogated to herself the pretension of regulating our foreign trade under the delusive name of retaliatory orders in council, a pretension by which she undertook to proclaim to American enterprise, "Thus far shalt thou go and no further." Orders which she refused to revoke after the alleged cause of their enactment had ceased, because she persisted in the practice of impressing American seamen, because she had instigated the Indians to commit hostilities against us, and because she refused indemnity for her past injuries upon our commerce. I throw out of the question other wrongs. So undeniable were the causes of the war, so powerfully did they address themselves to the feelings of the whole American people, that when the bill was pending before this House, gentlemen in the opposition, although provoked to debate, would not or could not utter one syllable against it. It is not to the British principle of allegiance, objectionable as it is that we are alone to look, it is to her practice, no matter what guise she puts on it. It is in vain to assert the inviolability of the obligation of allegiance. It is in vain to set up the plea of necessity and to allege that she cannot exist without the impressment of her seamen. The naked truth is she comes by her press gangs on board our vessels, seizes our native as well as naturalized seamen, and drags them into her service. It is the case, then, of the assertion of an erroneous principle and of a practice not conformable to the asserted principle, a principle which, if it were theoretically right, must be forever practically wrong. A practice which can obtain countenance from no principle whatever, and to submit to which on our part would betray the most abject degradation. We are told by gentlemen in the opposition that government has not done all that was incumbent on it to do, to avoid just cause of complaint on the part of Great Britain. That in particular, the certificates of protection authorized by the Act of 1796 are fraudulently used. Sir, government has done too much in granting those paper protections.
I can never think of them without being shocked. They resemble the passes which the master grants to his Negro slave. Let the bearer, Mungo, pass and repass without molestation. What do they imply?
Yes, Hal.
That Great Britain has a right to
Seize all who are not provided with them. From their very nature, they must be liable to abuse on both sides. If Great Britain desires a mark by which she can know her own subjects, let her give them an earmark. The colors that float from the masthead should be the credentials of our seamen. There is no safety to us, and the gentlemen have shown it, but in the rule that all who sail under the flag, not being enemies, are protected by the flag. It is impossible that this country should ever abandon
the gallant tars who have won for us such splendid trophies.
An honorable peace is attainable only by an efficient war. My plan would be to call out the ample resources of the country, give them a judicious direction, prosecute the war with the utmost vigor, strike wherever we can reach the enemy at sea or on land, and negotiate the terms of a peace at Quebec or at Halifax. We are told that England is a proud and lofty nation, which, disdaining to wait for danger, meets it halfway. Haughty as she is, we triumphed over her once, and if we do not listen to the counsels of timidity and despair, we shall again prevail. In such a cause, with the aid of Providence, we must come out crowned with success. But if we fail, let us fail like men, lash ourselves to our gallant tars, and expire together in one common struggle, fighting for free trade and seamen's rights.